welcome back for another deep dive with us. We always appreciate you tuning in. Today, we're diving into Simon Sinek's Start With Why.
Yeah, great book.
You flagged some stuff for me that was really interesting in there and got me thinking about, how much we focus on the what and the how we're doing things. But sometimes that deeper WHY gets kind of, pushed to the side.
Right.
And that's what Sinek's really getting at, I think. And I think this is going to be super relevant for you given your work in listeners' field.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of companies, a lot of individuals, we kind of just operate on autopilot.
Yeah.
Going through the motions without really understanding that driving force behind what we do.
Yeah.
And I think start with why. And his whole framework of the Golden Circle really brings that to light.
Okay, so break this down for me, this Golden Circle. Like, what's the big deal about starting with WHY?
Well, most organizations, right, they communicate from the outside in.
Okay.
They tell you what they do, they tell you how they do it, but they very rarely actually explain WHY.
Yeah.
And so inspirational leaders in companies, they kind of flip that.
Yeah.
They start with WHY. Why do we do what we do? What's our core belief? What's our purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what they communicate first. They make you feel like you're part of something much bigger.
So you're saying that like people connect more with like the mission and values of a company rather than like the products and services that they offer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's not about what you're selling.
Yeah.
It's about what you believe in. I mean, look at Apple, right?
Right.
I mean, their WHY has always been about challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
About thinking differently. It's not just about buying, a sleek phone or a cool laptop or whatever.
Yeah.
It's about buying into this whole mindset of being a rebel, right? Being different, being against the ordinary.
Right.
And that's what makes their customers such passionate advocates.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting, like you said, buying into a mindset, it's almost like they've created like this tribe or this like community of people who like have that same kind of shared desire to like break the mold.
Exactly. And that sense of belonging is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It's what fuels loyalty, word-of-mouth marketing, and ultimately it's what fuels long-term success.
Now, this makes me think about all the different ways that companies try to influence our behavior. And sometimes, let's be honest, it feels a little manipulative.
Right.
Sinek talks about this too, right?
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about the difference between manipulation and inspiration.
Okay.
So if you think about it, like those classic marketing tactics,
Yeah.
limited time offers, fear-based advertising, peer pressure, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those things work.
They do.
In the short term.
Short term, yeah.
But they don't build those lasting connections. They don't build trust.
Right. It's all about like instant gratification and getting you to just like make a decision without really thinking about it.
Exactly. So manipulation might get you a sale today,
Right.
but it won't necessarily get you a loyal customer for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's where inspiration comes in.
So how does a company inspire then rather than just manipulate? You mentioned earlier, I think, Southwest Airlines.
Yeah.
Like, what's their secret?
Yeah, they're a fantastic example of a company that really understands that. I mean, they've built their whole success really on this idea of employee well-being and genuine commitment to customer satisfaction, right? They create a culture where people feel valued, where they feel appreciated,
Right.
and they feel like they're part of something bigger than just an airline.
It's like that like ripple effect where like the happy employees, lead to happy customers, which ultimately leads to like a thriving business.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's a virtuous cycle, right? And it all goes back to that fundamental human need for connection,
Yeah.
for belonging to something meaningful.
I love that. This whole idea of like WHY, resonating on such a deep level is so fascinating to me. Sinek even links it to like the way our brains work, right? Something about the limbic system.
Yeah, that's right. He points out that the limbic brain, which is the part of our brain that controls feelings and decision-making, it doesn't have a whole lot of control over language.
Oh.
So it's why we often have trouble articulating WHY we do things.
Yeah.
We just feel it.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. It's like we make decisions based on emotion and then we try to rationalize them later.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Think about all those impulse purchases you've made. Or that time that you just like felt inexplicably drawn to a certain brand, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't really logically explain it,
Yeah.
but your limbic brain was sending you a signal. It just felt right.
Right.
So
Yeah. And for somebody like you who studies consumer behavior, that's got to be like a huge insight.
Absolutely. It completely changes the way that we think about marketing and communication, right?
Yeah.
We need to stop focusing just on features and benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to start tapping into those deeper emotional drivers.
Yeah.
We need to connect with people on that gut level,
Right.
on a level that resonates with their WHY.
Right. So we're talking about this like gut feeling and tapping into emotions. And Sinek uses this idea of a tipping point to explain how movements and ideas, catch on. It's not just about reaching like the masses, right? It's about reaching the right people.
Yeah,
Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So he draws on this idea called the law of diffusion, which essentially says that mass market success hinges on hitting this critical point of market penetration, about like 15 to 18%.
Okay.
And so it's not about convincing everyone at once. It's about igniting a spark in those early adopters,
Gotcha.
the people that really resonate with that WHY. And then they become your evangelists, right? They spread the word organically.
So it's almost like a chain reaction, right?
Is it, guys?
You get those initial believers on board and they just kind of like go out and spread the word.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Think about like the civil rights movement.
Right.
Like Dr. King didn't start by trying to win over the entire nation.
Right.
He focused on igniting a passion in those who believed in equality.
Right.
And that fire spread. And eventually, it led to this monumental shift in societal values.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
But it also makes me think about, like, how do we find our WH? Sometimes it feels like we just sort of fall into our careers, our life paths. Like, how do we actually sit down and say, like, okay, what's my purpose? What am I trying to do here?
It's a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And it often isn't a straight line.
Right.
There's a lot of twists and turns.
Yeah.
And Sinek suggests that we can often find our WHY by looking back. So connecting the dots between all the things that have truly energized us, the moments when we felt most alive,
Okay.
most fulfilled.
That's so interesting you say that, because when I think back on my own path, it's been like a series of just like random turns.
Yeah.
But there's always been this thread of like curiosity, a passion for like understanding how things work, and then like sharing that, with other people. Maybe that's my WHY.
That's a great example of how our WHY can reveal itself through patterns in our experiences, right?
Yeah.
It's about reflecting on those moments when you felt most in alignment with yourself.
Right.
When work felt less like a job and more like a calling.
Right, exactly. And Sinek talks about, he talked about different like personality types, right? WHY types and HOB types.
Yeah.
Can you break those down for me a little bit?
Sure. So he makes this distinction between people that are driven by the big picture vision, the WHY types,
Right.
and those that really excel at the execution, at getting things done.
So like the classic visionary versus the like pragmatist.
That's right.
Okay.
And the key takeaway here is that both types are essential for success.
Yeah.
The most impactful partnerships, they often involve a WHY type who sets the direction and a Hey W type that figures out how to make it happen.
So in your line of work, how do you see these different types like working together well, or like what's a good example of that?
So in research, for example, you often have WHY types that are driven by this desire to like understand a particular phenomenon or to solve like a pressing problem.
Right.
Right? They ask the big questions, they challenge the status quo.
Right.
And then you have the HOW types who are like the meticulous researchers who are designing the experiments, gathering the data, analyzing the results.
Yeah.
Without both,
You can't have good research.
you wouldn't have impactful research. Exactly.
It's so true. Even thinking about like the Wright brothers, right?
Right.
Wilbur was so focused on this WHY of, human flight. But it was Orville in the workshop, tinkering, figuring out the Hey W.
Exactly.
And together they did something incredible.
Exactly.
So, I mean, even recognizing your own type
Right.
can help you identify the kinds of partners that you need
Yeah.
that can help you bring your WHY to life.
For sure.
For me, as someone who loves to like explore these ideas and explain them, maybe partnering with someone who's like really good at like organization and structure would be like a good fit for me.
That's a great point.
But even with those right partnerships, you still need a way to like amplify your message, right?
Absolutely. So Sinek uses this metaphor of a megaphone.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Your company, your brand, your organization, that becomes the vehicle for broadcasting your WHY to the world.
Yeah. And that's where it gets tricky, right? Because I feel like so many companies start out with like this really strong WHY,
Right.
but then they lose sight of it as they grow. They get caught up in the day-to-day, the competition, the money.
It's a common pitfall,
Mm.
for sure. Companies like AOL, Walmart, Post Sam Walton, they're prime examples.
Yeah.
They started with this clear sense of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
but as they grew, their WHY got diluted, and they started making decisions that were no longer aligned with their original values.
Sinek has this really interesting concept called the celery test
Yes.
that's designed to, like, help you stay true to your WHY,
Yeah.
even when there's these, like, tempting distractions, right?
Uh-huh.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so imagine you're at the grocery store, right? And your WHY is to eat healthy, nourishing food.
Right.
So you're walking past the chips, the cookies.
Okay.
You even consider that delicious chocolate cake in the bakery section.
Right.
But ultimately, you choose celery and rice milk
Right.
because it's aligned with your WHY.
Right. It's about making choices that support your values, even when, like, it would be easy to stray.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
the celery test is basically this really simple but powerful way to evaluate opportunities and make sure they really resonate with your WHY. So let's say you're presented with like a project at work that promises this big bonus,
Right.
but it requires you to kind of compromise your ethics a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So if your WHY is to do meaningful work with integrity, that project would not pass the celery test.
Right. Because it's not in alignment.
Exactly.
It's almost like you have this internal compass, to help you navigate and
Like-
stay true to yourself.
Yep. And as leaders, it's our responsibility to not only define our own WHY, but to create environments where our team members can also connect with that purpose
Right.
and make decisions that are aligned with it as well.
Right. Which reminds me of something else that Sinek says about how, like, great leaders actually become, like, symbols of their WHY.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you talk about that a bit more?
Sure. So it's this idea that truly inspirational leaders, they embody their WHY in everything they do.
Okay.
They're not just managers. They're like walking, talking representations
Right.
of the organization's core purpose.
Think about somebody like Steve Jobs at Apple.
Exactly.
He wasn't just a CEO.
Right.
He was, like, the embodiment of Apple's WHY
Right.
to challenge conventions and to think differently.
Exactly. And that's often why companies struggle when they lose these iconic leaders.
Right.
Because there's this void that's left behind.
Right.
And it can be difficult to maintain that same level of inspiration and alignment.
It's hard to replace that.
It is, for sure.
So how do companies, like, ensure that their WHY lives on even after, like, the founder or a key leader is gone?
It's about weaving that WHY into the very fabric of the organization.
Okay.
So into the culture, the values, the decision-making processes.
Right.
It's about empowering every team member to become a champion of that WHY,
Okay.
to understand how their work contributes to that larger purpose.
It's such a powerful idea, right?
It is.
Like creating a culture where everyone feels so connected.
Yeah.
They're not just following orders, they're contributing to something much bigger than themselves.
That's the ultimate goal. And it's what separates truly inspirational organizations from the rest.
Right.
They don't just have, a mission statement on a wall.
Yeah.
They have this shared purpose.
It's lived and breathed.
It pulsates through every level of the organization.
Exactly.
So if we think about this in the context of like your work, what are some practical ways to like cultivate that sense of shared purpose within a team, within an organization?
It starts with clear and consistent communication, right? So leaders need to be able to articulate that WHY in a way that really resonates with people emotionally.
Yeah.
And it's not just about talking the talk, it's also about walking the walk, right? So every decision, every action, every interaction should reflect that WHY.
It's that alignment, right,
Exactly.
between words and actions.
Exactly.
So it doesn't just become this empty slogan on the wall.
That's right.
It's actually lived.
Exactly.
And it's also about creating opportunities for people to connect with that WHY on a more personal level, right?
Yeah.
So this could be through storytelling, sharing customer testimonials, or even just like highlighting team members who are really living that WHY.
Right, putting it into practice.
Exactly. You have to make that WHY tangible, relatable, something that people can actually see and feel and connect with.
I love that. So it sounds like creating a culture that really embodies the WHY. It's not just like a one-time thing, right?
Right.
It's something you have to like really nurture and reinforce.
Absolutely. It requires constant vigilance.
Yeah.
Especially as organizations grow and evolve, right?
Yeah.
There's always that risk of drifting away from that core purpose,
Yeah, getting lost in the day-to-day.
getting caught up in the hustle and bustle of, daily operations.
Right, right. Which brings us back to, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And this applies to so much more than just business, right?
You're absolutely right. These principles can be applied to any area of life
Yeah.
where you're trying to connect with people on a deeper level, whether it's building relationships, leading a team, or even like inspiring a movement.
It's that shared purpose, that
Right.
feeling of belonging to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly.
It all starts with, like, understanding your own why,
It
right?
does.
What are you passionate about? What drives you? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
That's right.
And once you have that clarity, it's almost like this guiding principle
Yeah.
for everything that you do.
Right.
Remember that celery test?
Yeah.
Like, does this opportunity, this decision, this relationship, does it align with my why?
Right.
If not, maybe it's not the right fit.
It might be tempting,
Yeah.
but it might not lead to long-term fulfillment.
Right. Exactly. So thinking about, your own journey,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give to someone who's still trying to figure out their why?
I would say, don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try new things, meet new people, step outside your comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
and really pay attention to those moments when you feel most energized, most fulfilled, most aligned with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Those are the clues, the breadcrumbs that are leading you towards your WHY.
It's like that old saying, follow your bliss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And trust that your WHY will reveal itself in its own time, right?
Oh, okay.
It's not always this sudden epiphany. Sometimes it's a gradual unfolding, a
Yeah.
process of discovery that continues throughout our lives.
Right. So it's a journey.
It is.
Even when you discover your why, that's not the end.
It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
The real work lies in living your WHY. Yeah. In making choices that are consistent with your purpose.
Yeah.
In building a life and a career that really reflect your values.
That's when you bring in those HOW types to help, right?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Finding those right partners, building the right team. Creating that support system is essential for actually bringing your WHY to life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway that you hope our listener will take with them today?
I would say your WHY is your superpower.
Okay.
It's what makes you unique. It's what gives your life meaning.
Yeah.
And it's what has the power to truly inspire and influence others.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate its importance.
I love that.
Yeah.
Knowing your WHY is just the first step. The real adventure is living it, sharing it, and using it to make a positive impact on the world.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us at Wisdom House, where we bring you timeless insights from the greatest books. If you found this deep dive valuable, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom House. Stay curious, stay inspired, and we'll see you in the next video.